We don't want to hear how they were successful. We want to hear how they ended up in the gutter because they were evicted, and how they survived that and built a company, or how they went broke, or how they gave the money back. That's pretty interesting because we have a lot of prominent people doing it, and I think the lessons are going to be real applicable lessons, as opposed to the current garbage that's out there of like, this is how I got my Ferrari. Where's the notes? I'm like, I'm talking. This is the notes. If you want to take notes, then take notes. But there's not going to be a PowerPoint. There's not going to be a note cards. There's not going to be a syllabus. There's not going to be a workbook. There's not going to be a packet. And you should be talking too, because you need to interact. I decided that year to be as productive as possible. And the things I did that year, because I knew everybody was going to waste the opportunity. They're just going to sit there and complain, which they did. And then it all was over, and they could go back to Applebee's like nothing had happened. So I wanted to come out of it different than when I entered into it.
Hello, innovators. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Shaun Gold, a 2x best-selling author to entrepreneur, being a speaker, superconnector, and even a nightlife ninja. So you employ a polymathic lifestyle, it seems. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath Polycast.
Thank you for having me, and that's former nightlife ninja.
Former.
We don't want listeners contacting me for nightlight hookups because, yes, I still have them, but I kind of, no matter what I do, I could cure cancer, and the first question would be, where's the after party? Right. So, yeah, former, please.
Hello, and welcome to the Polymath Polycast. Well, that's good to, mention it in the show. The way I like to break the ice, too, is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
That's a tough one. I'm pretty public with a lot of stuff I'm doing. Stuff that nobody knows, or stuff that nobody on social media knows?
Whichever one really works for you.
That's a tough one. Okay, fine. Really random. I've been practicing calisthenics for over a decade. No meat, no weights, no pills, sometimes just a shake. There's the polymathic workout schedule for you that I really don't brag about, and you and your listeners know about now.
I was a personal trainer, so I totally understand. Most of my exercises actually were calisthenics as well. It's one of those things where I feel like it just gets more parts of the body, and it's more effective than doing weights at first, especially.
100%. You're in, you're out. That's it. I don't got time to wait around and stack and re-rack. In and out. 45 minutes to an hour. Done.
I definitely like the 45-minute workouts best, too. The first question here is, what was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
Oh, man, my mindset changed from 5 hours ago, let alone 5 years ago. Here's the thing. You have to be constantly evolving. And I feel that our society rewards safety, and safety doesn't require a personal evolution. Most people reach the end of their personal evolution once they get a job with benefits, or as we call the career. That's it, And I feel like they stop questioning things, they stop thinking big, they stop dreaming, they stop taking action, and essentially, my mindset has changed significantly because I'm always evolving. You have to keep evolving. 5 years ago, well, we're a new year now, so I'm not going to count the first week of 2024. But 5 years ago, going back from 2023, my mindset was just focused on, I want to do something more than, being involved in nightlife and writing. I want to do something grander. I want to do something bigger. I want to be more involved in startups. I want to be more involved just in to get out of my comfort zone and to get out of my realm of expertise. And it's very scary when you think like that. And I think that's why people don't want to think like that. I don't think they want to change their mindset. I don't think they want to evolve their mindset, because the unknown is not fun. And it's not fun when you're trying something new. It's not fun when you're learning a new skill. It's not fun when you're trying to get your first customer. It's not fun when you're trying to build a brand. Everybody wants the fun, which is the fun is after you put in the years of blood, sweat, and tears, you see the results. But everyone wants to skip to they want to skip to that, and you can't.
Yeah.
Mindset wise, it's definitely changed. There's a quote by Heraclitus that says, "No man steps in the same river twice, for he's not the same man and it is not the same river." And that's kind of, when you're thinking about evolving yourself, your mindset, that quote, should be tattooed on your eyelids.
So I heard that quote by Heraclitus just the other day for the first time on Ryan Holiday's YouTube channel, which he talks a lot about stoicism. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how whenever you are reading the same book, for example, if you read it 5 years later, you were a different person at the time reading that book, and so you're going to get something different out of that book once you finish it again.
Yeah, but who rereads a book? Who reads a book? First, who reads a book, and then who rereads it? Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certain books that I've had like the same copies of since that I've constantly perused and reread since for over 20 years now, and they've continued to serve me well. But that's how they're like the classics and the good books. Most books are just like you read it, you're done. A lot of them are garbage. You know, I'm a very big proponent of trying to dig deep and find books that are very rare because they just didn't have success in their initial printing, or they weren't widely distributed, or it's an unknown author. Just because if you read the same books that everyone's reading, you're going to think the same way that everyone's thinking. You know, and I don't want to think the same way as the masses. I want to think in my own unique way, and that's how I generate my own unique content because I'm
Yeah.
reading the stuff. I'm reading the authors that nobody really knows about. I'm reading the stuff that aren't available in the bookstore. I'm really trying to delve deep into the other works by famous authors that don't get as much attention as their one primary bestseller or the one book that they're most famous for.
And I think that mindset's really good too when you're trying to approach finding unique books. But also the idea of like, let's say you're trying to learn self development or business, entrepreneurship. If you read 200 books, then you've read pretty much the entire collection of that kind of subject. If once you get past 200, you're not learning anything new. But I almost wonder what is the 20 or 10 books out of that 200 that are the most unique, and those are the ones that are like the most effective for what you're talking about there.
I think my rule of thumb is that with a few exceptions, I avoid books that have the author's picture on the cover.
Mm,
Like, it's never a good thing if they're sitting there, in deep thought, smiling, like arms crossed. It's never a good thing. They're probably going to tell you some personal stories that have nothing to do with you or your situation. They're probably going to be obsolete real quick. They're probably going to give you some sort of methodology that worked for a year or two at the time. I try to stick with books that are the classics, so to speak, and the ones that, as I said, are not easily found, and the ones that really give the most information, and the ones that are not, easily adopted into the jargon of everyone on social media. That's
yeah.
it. Because once they're pillaged enough, it's just you have some idiot thinking they know what they're talking about because they're quoting a book that everybody's read and thinking that they're so unique about it, and they're putting a hashtag with it, and it's you can tell right there they have no idea what they're doing.
Well,
So
speaking of books, though, what was the inspiration for your book, Be Better You?
better be you.
Better Be
So yeah,
You.
that was the fourth book I've written. I mean, so essentially, that one came from the fact that I was an entrepreneurship major when I was in school, and yes, I did go to the class. Not often, but I did. Um, and I wanted to kind of create like a course that could fit in your phone that wasn't $5,000 that anybody could read and get kind of a crash course on entrepreneurship, what to do, how to do it, and how to just like think differently and how to move forward and pursue it. So that's kind of how I looked at it, especially when I wrote it back then. I mean, I used to love college as far as like what college was for me, which was I was throwing parties, I was going out, I was doing all that stuff. Now I feel like college is not about that. College is more about being a funnel to a 9 to 5 rather than like go out and meet people, network, experiment, really have experiences. I mean, I've guest lectured at nearly a dozen universities, big ones, and I feel like even though you go to prestigious universities, I still feel like people lack certain skills, and I feel like that you need to have these skills. So my book was like an attempt that's like, hey, if you don't want to spend all this money on a university degree, or hey, you're really interested in entrepreneurship, then you can spend the $5 and get yourself somewhat prepared and make an investment in yourself that it's a win-win. You get new knowledge, and if you like it, great, and if you don't, fine, it won't work, but you can't lose, as opposed to spending 100K on a degree that most likely you're not gonna use or might be obsolete in the next year or two.
I definitely align with that. Before I started doing this podcast, I ended up doing a lot of videos and content around what I called this do-it-yourself modular degree, and so I created my own education. So I chose an alternative pathway. Is what I'm trying to say. So I definitely understand what you're going from there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, education doesn't end when you get a degree, and I think that's the
Yeah.
problem that a lot of people make is that they get the degree, they get the ceremony, and you get the bill.
Mhm.
Again, and that's it. And I mean, again, I've never had a real job, so no one ever asked for my transcripts. No one ever asked for my GPA. No, people always just like wanted to work with me based on my experience and what I could do and my connections and my knowledge. So I'm sure the transcripts are somewhere. I mean, but what
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to matter. But yeah, it's really you have to constantly keep educating yourself. You have to constantly keep learning. You have to constantly keep reading, and essentially, it doesn't end. And I feel like we're going back to your mindset question. If you're the same person you were a year ago, forget 5 years ago, a year ago, it's embarrassing. We don't have that embarrassing feeling in our society anymore.
Yeah.
In this society of do anything for clicks and cloud and all that, there's no such thing as being embarrassed. So let alone being the same person you were. It's like, oh great, I liked myself a year ago. I want to be that same mindset. I want to be that same person. I want to be that same individual reading the same stuff, playing the same Xbox, eating the same foods, having the same friends. And it's fine, but it's like you're playing it safe. And I feel like sooner or later, life is going to disintegrate you.
Yeah. Well, and one of my motivations behind the mod degree was also to have lifelong learning because, like you said, we need to constantly evolve, constantly change, and constantly change what we're learning too, and keep track of that. It is interesting to think about how people who are like in the medical field or personal trainers, they have these continuing education requirements because it is known that we need to keep learning throughout our lives. But for some reason, after college, like you said, people just kind of stop, and then within a year, they forget most of what they had learned because they didn't keep it up, get that retention.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take it upon yourself to keep learning. And never before in history has it been easy to learn anything you want at any time of the day.
Mhm.
I mean, again, I prefer the old school, let's be in a lecture hall and interact. But I don't think that happens anymore because whenever
Mhm.
I give most of the lectures now on Zoom, but whenever I used to go to colleges, it would always be like, where's the PowerPoint? I don't use PowerPoint.
Mhm.
It's like where's the notes? I'm like, I'm talking, this is the notes. If you want to take notes, then take notes, but there's not going to be a PowerPoint, there's not going to be a note cards, there's not going to be a syllabus, there's not going to be a workbook, there's not going to be a packet, and you should be talking too because you need to interact. Yeah, I mean, essentially, if there's a Latin quote, it translates to is if you're going to do it. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no excuses. If you're going to do it. Was it like fix us fix? I can't remember the exact Latin. Forgive me. Wasn't a Latin major, but that's the
Oh,
translation. If you're
how
going
could
to
you?
do it, do it.
All this accumulated knowledge, it probably helped you out when you were on Jeopardy. So, what was that like for you?
It was dope, as the kids say. Um, Still with it, I studied for like a month straight, and even
Mm,
so, even with that, maybe like less than 1% actually proved useful. The problem is with somewhat of my mindset, and my mentality, and like a photographic memory is that now that information is there forever. So whenever I watch it, which I still do, I have questions that I can answer because it came up during my studies. I mean, it was very stressful because you want to do your best and you don't want to leave with the lowest score in history. you know
yeah.
but you people always assume that they give you a study guide, and it's like, no, I didn't even get a guide to the hotel. They give you a
Mm.
date to be there and a time to be there. That's it. 30 days notice. So you really have to take it upon yourself to study all accumulated knowledge in every single vertical.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of knowledge, but again, it just, unless it comes up, it's just going to be there stored.
I need to look on different guests on the show and see if I can find any polymaths on the show to come on to this one. But I heard you say you have a photographic memory there. What is that like?
It means I retain a lot of information, especially once I look at it. So it's
Hmm.
not to the point of like von Neumann where I can memorize the phone book. It's to the point
Right.
that once I read a book, I retain the knowledge very well. Once if I get really deep into studying something, I retain the knowledge. It doesn't work if I'm not interested. So if there's a
Mm.
subject I could care less about, it's not going to retain because I don't have a natural inclination toward it. So for instance, soap operas is not a good category for me.
Yeah.
Sitcoms are not a good category for me. But like history, military history, science, cosmology, astronomy, philosophy, mythology, psychology, business, economics, technology. I mean, so many different things. Yeah, I have an interest in, so just retain it. And you constantly have to keep, at least for me, again, I have to constantly keep reading because I want to keep expanding.
Hmm.
There's no limit to the mind. There's the only frontiers of your mind are those that you set, and usually those are set by your peers. Don't waste your time. You're never going to need this. Why you should learn something more applicable to your life, whatever. But if I have a natural inclination, I'm going to read it. I'm going to just voraciously gobble it up.
Yeah. I definitely understand that, so especially when there was like when the metaverse and Web3 stuff was really hyped up a couple years ago. I definitely went on a deep dive and just took as much information as possible and tried to disseminate it into a blog post too, but also just try to take in as much information
Mm-hmm.
because I was curious about it. What was the most recent, I guess, rabbit hole you went down?
Most recent, like deep dive, Arthurian myth.
Any highlights of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting together, especially for my newsletter, and I have a possible upcoming TEDx talk this year.
Hmm.
Topics surrounding entrepreneurship and growth as it applies to Arthurian myth, specifically Percival and the quest for the Grail. So I really read the Percival by Wolfram von Assenbach, the German version, and there's another version by Crichton de Troyes. So I read that one. You had the later versions by Thomas Mallory. So I was really deep diving into that. And then as you deep dive into it, you read about the Green Knights, the once and future king, La Morte d'Arthur, all that stuff. Just deep diving into it. It's nice once you find something that you click with that you
Yeah.
just have to gobble everything up. So that's the most recent. But that wasn't the only thing because I also have the other stuff that I do for clients because I do a lot of thought leadership. I do a lot of writing in VC space, in self-development space, personal growth space, all that. So it's always something. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not reading and I'm not thinking and I'm not constantly trying to improve myself.
I definitely understand that. And I'm noticing, hence, different languages. Do you speak multiple languages too?
So I had knowledge of Japanese and Spanish pretty much back in the day when I used to travel and whatnot. But I was kind of a Japanophile growing up, so I
Hmm.
was always interested in Japan. So I was taking lessons. I went to Japan, found out most people speak English. Kind of deterred me a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's at this point no, nothing fluent. I mean, it's something where it's like, yeah, I could possibly learn, but at the same time, it's a trade off from do I want to learn another language or do I want to learn, again, doing a deep dive into something I'm really going to enjoy and that's really going to be more applicable than, learning Esperanto.
Yeah.
you know?
Esperanto was one of my favorites because I spent a lot of time with Duolingo, and out of the 6 languages I played around with on Duolingo, Esperanto was my favorite.
Yeah.
I wish it didn't died out, really.
See, that's the problem. You spend all this time and then it's kind of like, what do you mean nobody speaks ancient Greek?
La canabo is the bona. Well, moving on to the next question here. How do you manage your multidisciplinary life?
As far as what?
So, I mean, you have all these different avenues, like the self development for your own self, but also for people you're helping and coaching. You have the coaching, you had all the classes you were teaching, you have all the different entrepreneurial aspects, different books you're writing, all these different things you're doing. How do you manage your time? How do you juggle many different plates? That kind of thing.
Oh, okay. It's not hard. I just feel like most people are under the impression that, the day is by 8-hour chunks. You have a job, you have free time, and you have sleep. So if you take out the fact that if you have a job, right, that you have to commute to and be to, and you don't have that, you can kind of set your own schedule. So for me, I've always set my own schedule. So essentially, it's just whatever works. I wake up and if I have stuff to do for clients or whatnot, I do it. If I don't, I do stuff for myself. And I've always just had multiple different projects going on. So they're in various stages. I have a feature film that has a major Netflix director attached. I have a producer attached, but I've already written it. So other than that, it's out of my hands. The Hollywood people are doing their Hollywood thing. We have an animated series we're executive producing, and that I'm also starring in an episode of. So I'm in. Again, my episode's already been recorded and everyone that we're putting on the show has already been reached out to. And if something comes in, I take it. I'm also used to dealing with tons of different clients, so it's not a problem for me to switch from client to client or from task to task. And also, it's just time is relative. I've never was in that. Oh, it's so busy, blah blah blah. I can't deal with it. I've always been driven to have days like that where there's a million things going on. When you wake up and there's nothing going on, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah.
When the
What do you
phone
do?
is silent, and when the inbox is zero inbox, and there's nothing to do. I mean, there's always something to do, but I prefer, I don't want a dull existence. I've always preferred to have lots of stuff going on. I mean, it comes from my years of working in nightlife, where I would just have thousands of people contacting me, so I'd always be on
Mhm.
point, 7 days a week, ready to go. And I feel like everything I do now is trying to fill that gap of not having the thousands of people contacting me, and not having that high energy thing to take part in. So I have to do it myself.
I almost feel like the nightlife life was almost nightlife life. That kind of lifestyle was almost too extreme, and now that you're kind of in the more medium to heavy busyness, it still seems very light in comparison, just because of
Yeah,
the
I mean,
point
it
of view.
really was. I mean, it was just people couldn't believe, even to this day, of like how many people contacted me, how I had to respond immediately, how I had to actually come through on my word, how I had to navigate different egos and archetypes, how I had to just get a mission accomplished. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
it was crazy. You'd have to really learn how to juggle celebrity clients, high net worth clients, your personal friends, all that stuff at the same time, and you have to do it within the same 30 seconds. And it takes a little bit, but a lot of people get overwhelmed easily. And to me, that was kind of what I lived for. I was like ready to do it.
Personally, I'm a bit more like you, where I like having being pulled many different ways. Like when I had 6 different roles at once, and everyone's pulling me different ways, it felt more at home than when I was only having like one job or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I often think about the opposite end of just being silent, being alone with yourself, having meditation practices, stuff like that. Have you ever really dabbled or experimented into the opposite end of the extremity?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of walk alone. I exercise alone. Like I have a lot of alone time. I don't meditate
Mm,
or anything like that. But yeah, I have no problem with solitude. As long as there's solitude and things going on, I'm cool. As long if I'm
mm,
just sitting there with nothing happening and looking outside, it's not good. I think I think we all had that during the pandemic.
yeah.
I don't I can sit outside and look out the window, not have anything happening, but I know in the back of my mind that yeah, there's clients, there's things moving on, there's things are moving forward. So yeah, it's fine. I mean, there are days if you do it long enough and you have all the craziness happen, you're just going to hit a wall. There's going to be a day you wake up and you don't want to do anything,
Mhm.
and that's fine. That's completely normal. I mean, you just have to have a day where you just don't do anything. You just sit there
Got to reset a little bit.
and watch movies or eat popsicles or whatever, which is fine. I mean, I only need one of those days like every 2 or 3 weeks to kind of recharge. But other than
Mhm.
that, it's fine. I never, there's people that don't understand because they think that, oh, you're a workaholic, you're missing out on life. And it's like, well, you don't get what I'm doing because their version of life is, again, I have a set schedule. I show up to a certain office. I stay until a certain time. And after that, my time is my time. But they've sacrificed the largest part of their day and the most productive part of their day for something that doesn't apply to them. Whereas,
Yeah.
the largest part of my day is from when I wake up to when I decide it ends. So if I'm feeling energetic at 10 in the morning, I'm going to do something. If I'm feeling lazy, I'm going to do it at 3 or 4
Yeah.
or maybe postpone it. I mean, I can do what I want. So I've never had that where it's like you're missing out or you should be doing this. I mean, there's a great deal of people that all have advice, and I guarantee most of them have never been in your situation or in trouble, but they're always eager to help when they're not asked for it.
I was just curious about that too, because when it comes to managing all these different things, understanding the different extremes, but also where you're at right now, kind of having that perspective is really important. You mentioned the quarantine time when everyone's kind of stuck at home. I was kind of lucky because I started doing these interviews during that time. So I had the podcast for 6 years, but 3 years
Mhm.
ago I started doing the interviews. And so I was just busy all throughout that year doing interviews like this. So I felt like I was pretty lucky in that regard. I kept that kind of craziness going.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I decided that year to be as productive as possible, and
Yeah.
the things I did that year, because I knew everybody was going to waste the opportunity. They're just
Yeah.
going to sit there and complain, which they did, and then it all was over, and they could go back to Applebee's like nothing had happened. So I wanted to come out of it different than when I entered into it. And with that being the case, I mean, I read more than I ever read. I networked virtually. I learned as much as I could. And the things I put into play in that year are still affecting me positively now, years later.
Same. Yeah.
So it's just people don't realize they expect to have the success immediately. because we live in a society where everything can be summoned. But the success you want cannot be summoned. It's the one thing that can. And you have to actually be patient, and you have to be resilient, and you have to be tenacious, and you have to keep going, because things change fast. Doesn't seem like it when you're in the middle doing it. Doesn't seem like it. But a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you're going to see the results. And you have to keep moving forward, and you can't stay still, and you can't just sit there and hope. You have to keep, you have to take action and experiment and see what works and see what doesn't. And if it works, you keep going, and if it doesn't work, then you pivot. I mean, that's it.
It definitely feels weird too, being we just like you said, the first week of 2024. It feels weird being this far ahead in time, because it feels like yesterday that 2020 was here. And something I've asked since the beginning of the show to all my guests is, what is a polymath to you?
It's an interesting question. To me, it's just someone that has a breadth of knowledge in a variety of different areas and puts that knowledge to use. I think that's the key differentiator, is they put it to use. Um, like I said, I have knowledge in so many different areas, and I try to incorporate it into everything I'm doing. And because of that, and because of my startup background and all that, I'm able to say, okay, well, I work with multiple AI companies. I've worked with hospitality companies. I've worked with technology companies in various verticals. I've done so many different things, and just the knowledge that came from working with each one added to my overall polymathic abilities, as well as my personal interest and personal curiosity in different things, different avenues. So, but I always put it to use. I try to put it to use. Not everything can be profitable, but it can be incorporated into an area that is profitable.
And like the transcontextual thinking as well. So even if the one area that you've learned may not be profitable or applicable on its own, taking that knowledge you learned from it and applying it to another area could be profitable.
Yes. There's so many different things, and people want specialists, but specialists, I mean, they don't triumph in the world because they're so specialized. There's an old joke that says the best time to get heart surgery is when there's a cardiology conference, because all the
Yeah.
world's best specialists are going to be at that conference. They're the ones that probably make a mistake. You'd have the guy that's not as good, but is good enough to do it. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like you have to come from all these different areas, and you can put all those areas to use and really focus on it, and not be specialized in one field, especially now, because I don't think people realize that artificial intelligence is going to eat the world in a way that's never been done before. And you have to have all these different areas of knowledge to combine into essentially what you do, what you can bring to the table, and who you are. That's a major competitive advantage. And I'm seeing it, because who knows that a year or two from now, Chat GPT 7 or whatever is going to be so good at doing what you're doing that, okay, what should we do as a company? Should we pay $100,000 a year to have the AI assistant, or should we hire 20 people and spend $5 million and then give them health insurance and give them benefits and give them a retreat? I think we're going to hire the AI, and I think we're going to pay the AI company. So you really have to be that person that has knowledge of so many different verticals and combines it into something that you can offer. And I feel like the more you do, the more you experiment, and the more you put yourself out there, and the more you try and network and work with people and go and put your foot into different pools, the better off you'll be, just as far as an individual, both personally and professionally.
There definitely seems to be what a lot of creators are calling this digital renaissance right now too, and the creators and the just generalists who are able to adapt to all these new skills and new areas, new topics forming up are the ones that are going to succeed the most.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's you just have to remember that a lot of this stuff is everything's Pareto distribution. That's why when we think of the Renaissance, we think of Da Vinci, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. Who else? It's like I'm sure there's others,
Yeah.
Botticelli, of course, but there's only, you're going to have to be very good at what you do to rise to the top, both as a creator, both just as a founder, as an entrepreneur, even as an employee. You really have to put all these skills together. You have to learn to utilize all these tools, or learn how to hire someone that does to help you with what you want to do.
This next question here is one term I haven't heard on this show for a long time, since the beginning of the show, is this idea of a superconnector. How
Mhm.
could you describe that? Because I saw it on your profile.
Someone that has a network that will take the calls. That's it.
Hmm.
That's as easy. Easy definition. Essentially, listen, I have a huge network and I know everybody. I have friends in high places and low places, and they all like me for some reason. So I won't bug them with something that wouldn't be in their best interest. Most people will just add as many people as they can to a LinkedIn profile so they can say they have 50,000 connections, all of which is meaningless. And then they say, how can my network help you? And it's like, I don't need 50,000 connections. I need 5 people or 4 people that you have a really good relationship that you can open a door. And that's kind of what I do, is I have very good relationships across Wall Street, entertainment, venture capital, technology, whatever the case may be, that they will get back to me. Might not be instantaneous because they're busy people, prominent people, but if I have someone they should meet or something that they should see, they're going to take a look. That's just how it is. So for being a super connector, that's what it is. I have the keys to the kingdom, and for those I work with, because they pay the price, I unlock it. And for the random people that hit me up that says, I want this, introduce you to this person, I ignore them because I don't know who they are. And the worst thing to me is contacting someone that respects me and that I trust and giving them a horrible contact and wasting their time. And then when they see my name pop up on a screen, they say, I'm gonna not respond. It's never really happened, but it's always a constant fear. So I have to just protect my network and insulate myself from people that are just out there that use me and people that just want to, use the network. And it's common.
Oh
It's
yeah,
common for
people
people
use.
that, have a network and that have a track record, because people are always going to come and they're going to be like, hey, we should do something together. And by do something together, you should do everything. And when it's ready, we'll be partners. And it's like, so you want me to waste a year of my time on something for a stranger with no benefit and no upside, and I have to already use my network and my contacts and my clout and my resources for what? And it happens. I mean, it's not just me. Other people get the same thing where it's like, we have a great idea. We just need you to make it happen. Okay. Yeah.
It's that level of care that you apply towards your network that gives them that trust in you.
100%. I wouldn't give them an introduction that wouldn't benefit them or that they would find intriguing. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I
Yeah.
really don't. Just how nobody wants. The vast majority of people that I deal with don't want to waste my time. There's always the random people that are just like, here, meet these people. They're coming to Miami, and they'll just be. There's no reason for me to meet them. There's just no
Yeah.
reason. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste my time to go meet with somebody because they're not doing what I'm doing, and I can't really help them, and I don't really see the connection, and it's
Well,
fine.
the idea of the superconnector too is also just having that mindset of, is it beneficial for both parties? So
Yeah.
if that person is actually going to help this other person, even if they're lower maybe standing than the other person, if they have something that the other person needs, it's a great win-win scenario.
I mean, it has to be mutually beneficial. We don't want to have a parasitic relationship.
Yeah.
I don't, because that's what it is, especially in startups. People just want to leech off you. It's how it was in Nightlife. People just want to use you. They just want to, suck you dry, suck your blood dry, and then move on to the next victim, next host. So you have
Emotional
to just be on
vampires.
guard.
Going to this next question here, what was the inspiration for the utopian journey?
So that actually came out during the start of the pandemic,
Hmm.
just because I had all this knowledge and I wanted to do something fun that wasn't, as we discussed, wasting my time.
Right.
I wanted to just put my knowledge into something that could help people. So I did. I mean, listen, we experimented with different art styles and I experimented with different topics. And, now I have a newsletter on Substack that's almost 24,000 subscribers. I've worked with, I won an award from European Tech Consortium for sustainability because mental wellness was part of the UN sustainability SDG um, bylaws, I guess, like Section 3.1. Worked with different universities, spoke at different universities, have a case study on me coming out this year regarding it. So a lot of cool stuff that just came from, let's do something fun during the pandemic that I can put time into and not feel like I wasted it. And been on panels, been on podcasts and whatnot. And again, it's allowed me to take all my knowledge as far as mental wellness, psychology, and mythology and philosophy and put it into something useful.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when I was scrolling through your Instagrams, I saw the Da Vinci style of just kind of like the Da Vinci notebook kind of style quotes. And then on the other stuff, you had this different, like you said, different experimentation and see what works. I love the idea of utopia. So when I saw the utopian like journey kind of name, I was like, that seems pretty cool. Like definitely taking the you, but also you as a person.
Mm-hmm. I try to make it clever.
Yeah.
So I try, if I do anything, I'm good at coming up with cool things and trying to make it clever.
All right. And so I can kind of guess from the whole nightlife history, but where did the idea of the party polymath come from?
I mean, essentially, because with one, I was in university when I started doing it, right? I was throwing
Mm,
parties when I was 17, and then I came to University of Miami to continue to throw parties. And with that being the case, essentially, as I was getting an education and being self educated and whatnot, you realize that most people in nightlife, and by most people, I mean all, are not educated. They didn't go to university. They didn't really have a background outside of anything but what they did in the street, throwing parties.
mhm.
So for me, it was just, all right, well, here I am getting a degree. And then I got a degree. And then I started lecturing at different schools and writing books and doing all this cool, fun stuff, it just clicked. It was just, all right, yeah, I do all this stuff, but I'm also not really sitting at home on a Friday night reading. I mean, I am now, but back then I was,
Yeah.
throwing parties with the top DJs in the world and celebrities and models and all that stuff. So just that was one moniker, and the other moniker was Nightlife Ninja.
And I saw another term too on your site was like this future finder as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a few different monikers as well.
Yeah, I try. We always trying to have different things that stand out. But yeah, I think that, most people, they see a void as the future, and I think we all see it. And people are like, "I don't have a future," and it's like, "Well, of course you don't. If you did, it'd be the past." I mean, that's how it works. But it's about finding a goal or something that you want to do, and then kind of walking the void and being a void shaper and trying to make that future reality. And it's a really long journey, but that's your life.
Hmm.
The no one has a direct path to success. It just doesn't exist. You have to blaze it, and it usually ends in the abyss. It goes through the abyss, but you have to be able to climb out. And that right there is a skill I think that nothing can prepare you for. You just have to do it and learn through experience.
You have to mold and shape the void into a path that you can blaze through.
Exactly.
I love that future finding kind of mindset. And from speaking to books, what do you have coming ahead that you're looking forward to? You mentioned the whole filmmaking thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a lot of cool projects I'm involved in, but the animated series, Executives in Space, we're going to drop this spring. I'm really excited for that because, again, I'm executive producing it. I have my own episode, but what we do is we're taking different executives and entrepreneurs, and we're doing animated episodes of what their worst mistake was, what their worst failure
Mm,
was. We don't want to hear how they were successful. We want to hear how they ended up in the gutter because they were evicted, and how they survived that and built a company, or how they went broke, or how they gave the money back. That's pretty interesting because we have a lot of prominent people doing it, and I think the lessons are going to be real applicable lessons as opposed to the current garbage that's out there of like, this is how I got my Ferrari.
yeah.
This is how you become a millionaire. Step one, get $1 million. Done. Please like and share.
Yep.
So real content, helpful content, and we're looking to try and make that as kind of a cornerstone of all future entrepreneurial and business education. So we have that, Executives in Space. I have the film project, which again, it moves at a glacial pace because that's the entire film industry. But I'm excited for that.
Hmm.
Hopefully, there'll be more traction coming through with that. Um, I still do events here and there, but they're mostly focused on business events and investor events and whatnot. Um, I'm trying to get my graphic novel. I have another graphic novel in the works. I'm trying to get out there. My personal business of working with startups and helping with pitch decks and pitch deck reviews and audits and helpful fundraising connections. I'm always looking to scale that. And just, being me. I feel like I always used to say being me is a full time job. And it is. Um, I have a lot of cool companies I work with in various capacities. And, I'm always trying to get them to the next level of success. And, we just started the year, and I feel like everyone already they're already over the resolutions. That's it.
Yeah.
They're done. I tried lifting weights, but they were heavy, so,
Really.
um, they're done. Whereas me, I'm like really focused because a year is a long time, and a year can change your life if you really are on that trajectory. And you can be in the middle of March or April and be like, this year sucks. But if you keep going, then by October, November, you could just be a totally different person. You can have a totally different mindset, a totally different bank account, a totally different, thought process, connections, relationships. It goes back to what I said earlier. Nobody wants to be in it. They want to be able to talk about it after they were in it. It's not about the journey, it's the destination. Well, no, what was that to say? It's not about the destination, it's the journey. Here's the thing. It's about neither. Okay. Because both are going to suck. There's a quote by Kierkegaard that says, do it or don't do it. You'll regret both.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. So you can either sit there on the sidelines and think about all the stuff that could happen. You can actually do it and then experience all the stuff that could happen. And when you reach the end of it, you can either look back and should I have done it or shouldn't I don't know. But that's the point of it, because success is a long arc. We don't know where you're going to be, and it's very hard to see that from your present perspective. You just have to. I tell everyone, you have to experiment. You can't be afraid of failing. You can't be afraid of spending money. You can't be afraid of losing money. You just can't be afraid of little things like that. And you really can. And I feel like it turns so many people off that they have to put hours of time into something that can change their life, or that they have to put not even a lot of money, like $500 into something that could change their life. And they're like, oh, it's annoying. I'm not going to do that. And meanwhile, forget about it. I'm buying an Xbox, I'm getting a new phone, no problem. So yeah, I mean, if you really want to, be successful and you really want to get to the top of the mountain, you're going to have to, go through hell to get there. And then the worst part is, once you reach the top of the mountain, there's other mountains. It's not just one.
It's a continuous thing.
And I feel like people are like, wait, again? I feel like that's what life is. It's one continuous climb after the other.
And oftentimes the mountains are even taller at the next you go, each one.
Exactly. And that discourages a lot of people. If you look at the mountain top, you're never going to get there. But if you look at like the wall before you have to climb and just keep focused on the next rung and the next rung, you'll get there. But if you start off looking like it's so tall, I'm never going to do it, then there's no point. It's just you're not going to be inspired or motivated to climb it just to climb it.
I don't know if this analogy will fit much, but I was playing the Zelda game on the Switch a few years back, and I was climbing a mountain at the beginning of the game when you have no stamina, no ability to actually go very far. And the mountain was pretty much like a staircase, so it definitely had a vertical, flat, vertical, flat, vertical, flat. And there was at least 5 or 6 of those to get up. And with no stamina, you have to be very careful about actually getting up. And I remember spending probably an hour trying to do this simple little climb when later on in the game it would take you 5 seconds to do it. But I just remember getting to the top of the mountain after striving and getting killed by all the monsters that were stronger than me. And then finally getting to the top of the mountain and be able to see the view in the game. But it was very satisfying to be able to accomplish that.
Okay, well, that's beyond me. But I remember when I played the first Zelda and I got a wood sword, and the wood sword sucked. But if you stayed with it long enough, you got a real sword. The one.
And you get the magic sword.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was on Nintendo. So you only had 1 or 2 hearts, but if you kept playing, you'd get like 20 hearts, and you can plant bombs and go into the dungeons and get a piece of the Triforce. I feel like people rather play a video game but not play their life. I feel like that's the case. And I used to be an old school gamer. Many people don't realize this. Going back to the front, the start of the episode, but since we're on the topic of games, I'll talk about it. But I placed as a finalist in my hometown back when I was your age in the Blockbuster World Video Game Championships. Oh man,
what's Blockbuster?
Yeah, exactly. It was an empire that is now nothing but ruins. But yeah, I had my name on the board, and so all my little friends saw my name on the board and flipped out. So it was that was a big thing. But yeah, again, it's something where you have to challenge yourself in life, and you have to kind of keep going. And I feel like you're further ahead than a person that doesn't want to partake. Always.
Well, wrapping up here, where could people find you online?
I think the best way, and we're gonna have a link right below, right? Like click the link below. Yeah. Best way to connect with me is LinkedIn, 100%. Just please include a message. That's all I ask. Just say where you found me, why you're connecting, with 1 sentence. I get a lot of garbage inbound on LinkedIn, as I'm sure we all do. But for some reason, I get a lot more. um, yeah, LinkedIn, and then my newsletter, Utopian Journey, which we'll have a link to that you can sign up to as well. Goes out, either depending on the week, usually every week or bi-weekly, but it always goes out. And yeah, I'm always around. I'm always happy to connect. So feel free to reach out, slide into the DMs, as they say.
Well, that is a great call to action there. What could be a call to growth for the audience to do?
Call to growth, as in, you want me to leave them with an inspiring quote, or just or
A quote works.
Okay. I'm Shaun Gold, and for as long as you live, keep learning how to live.
I like it. Well, like you said, he's Shaun Gold, and I'm Dustin, PolyInnovator. This is the Polymath podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.